Good afternoon. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. I'm here with Deputy County Executive Ken Jenkins, and it is Monday, April 12th. This is our update for the Westchester Coronavirus Status Report here in Westchester County. This is the first of two reports that we do each week on Mondays and on Thursdays. Try to give you an idea of where we are with this continuing pandemic, which we hope is getting better given the fact of vaccinations as well as some reduction in infection levels. We're also going to be joined in a few minutes by the town supervisor of the town of Mamaroneck, Nancy Seligson, a longtime friend and a terrific public official who's going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the town of Mamaroneck, which includes the village of Larchmont and part of the village of Mamaroneck. So she'll be with us here as well today as part of our continuing program of having municipal officials also update you on what's happening in their neck of the woods. So the numbers that we have today are from the New York State workbook tracker on COVID numbers as of yesterday. As of the 2 o'clock hour, the tracker had not been updated. It may be updated during the period of time that I'm giving the briefing right now, or it might be done shortly after. You may see some movement in the numbers. But as of yesterday, we had 5,333 active cases of coronavirus in Westchester County. That was on the basis of pandemic to date, 123,838 individuals who have contracted COVID at some point in time or another during the pandemic, and 118,505 individuals who have had it more than 2 weeks ago and therefore have cleared the protocol for being ill by this. That number, 5,333, is almost as low as we have had since the rise in our numbers that came in the month of November. If you remember, we were very low last summer. We started to rise in October, and there was a rapid rise throughout November, and it went from about 1,000 cases through the 5,000 mark where we are now, and ascended all the way up to 11,500 by mid-January. That number has been coming down much slower the last couple of weeks. I've mentioned the last time I reported that it was flat, slightly up, slightly down over a few days. Over the last couple of days, it has dropped a little bit more. So we're at 5,333 today, and that is just 100 cases above the lowest amount that we've had over the last 4 or 5 months or so. So hopefully that is a good sign in the dropping of the number of cases, but that's still a lot of active cases, 5,333 cases active. The very good news is in the hospitalization numbers, which have now been dropping over the last week rapidly. We have finally gotten under 200 people hospitalized for COVID. As of our Saturday numbers, we were down to 192, and that number compares very favorably. When I last updated everyone on Thursday, we had 209. A week ago today, we had 230. So to be down to 192 is a very good sign. It is a good direction, and we haven't been under 200 in quite a while, so that is a very good sign. We have lost 2,231 individuals aggregate in COVID. Overnight from Saturday into Sunday, we lost 3 individuals, and over the course of the week, we lost 17 individuals, which is a little bit lower number for the weekly total. But again, I always caution, every fatality is a human being. It's a serious loss of life from a family and from neighbors and co-workers, so it is not to be minimized by saying that we're happy that we see a statistic that is shrinking. We want to see that shrink down to 0, and then we'll truly be happy. But the numbers are encouraging. They continue to be encouraging, but they're not dramatic. If we were dropping 1,000 over the course of a week, and I'd like to say when the hospitalization numbers get below 100, get below 50, and the fatalities go a week or 2 weeks with no fatalities, then we'll really feel like we're on the front end of what would be the end of all of this. Our vaccination numbers continue to rise. We have 4 locations in the county that the county, the state, and the federal government are in one way, shape, or form or another involved in vaccination. Everyone is aware the county center has been up since January. We can accommodate over 2,000 people a day. We've often hit the 2,500 mark. It seems to work very efficiently by all standards that we've seen. They have administered 180,352 vaccinations through the end of the workday yesterday. They are open 7 days a week, 11 hours a day from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., and they are the single largest source of vaccination in the county. Westchester County directly has 2 clinics, one here in downtown White Plains and one at the community college in the gymnasium there on the Greenburgh-Mount Pleasant borderline. They opened, the gymnasium one opened a little bit later than the county center one did, does not have the capacity that the county center does. In the aggregate, though, the 2 clinics together have administered 38,637 vaccinations. And then the Yonkers Armory, which was opened slightly more than a month ago, and that is a larger facility, they've administered 36,000 vaccinations. So just from those 4 locations alone, 253,000 vaccinations have been given. Now that aggregates the 1-shot Johnson & Johnson and the 2-shot Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. So in total number of vaccinations, that is not directly equal to the number of people, but it's not far apart. We'll give you some percentage numbers in a second about the number of folks who are vaccinated. But the bottom line is the vaccination program is very robust in Westchester County. It continues. It is now open to everyone of any age to be able to be vaccinated. There is the proviso that if you're a 16 or 17-year-old, you should be vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine only, because that one was tested on people who are 16 and 17 years of age. From 18 and above, all 3 vaccines have been determined to be safe by the Federal Drug Administration: the Moderna virus vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, and the Johnson & Johnson 1-shot vaccine. We have established as a county 2 satellite locations. They've been called pop-ups out in the market. I prefer to use the word satellite because they're an offshoot of what we're doing elsewhere. There's one today that I just had a chance to see within the hour in Bedford Hills. It is at the Bedford Town Hall, and the supervisor, Mary Ann Carr, was there. The mayor of the village town of Mount Kisco, Gina Picanich, was there. And then also getting a vaccine was the supervisor from Mount Pleasant, Carl Fulgenzi. And some of our folks here, Diana Toledo and Aviva Meyer, were there to help organize the vaccinations, and they will be dealing with over 200 individuals in Bedford Town Hall today for vaccinations in Bedford. Thursday and Friday, we'll be back at the Portchester Senior Center from 9 a.m. to 4:45. If you need a vaccination there, you can call the Portchester Seniors at 939-4975, 939-4975. And obviously, we want to reach out to everybody, not just in that community, but in any of the surrounding areas who have not yet gotten a vaccination. The vaccination numbers are rising, but we still haven't met the full demand for them, and we hope to continue to do that. So for Thursday and Friday, 9 a.m. to 4:45, there's time for you to make an appointment. That would be helpful. We're looking at other satellite locations for us as a county. The state is also setting up satellite locations. They had one in White Plains on the east side, right next to West Harrison, at Mount Hope AME Zion Church on Lake Street over the weekend on Saturday, and they vaccinated a significant number of people, and we'll be doing more of that as we go forward. The problem that we do face with Johnson & Johnson, you've been made aware of. It's national news. They've had some problems in one of their Baltimore facilities, and the J&J allocation for upcoming weeks has been eliminated or reduced dramatically. It is the single-shot J&J vaccine that we prefer to use for satellite purposes. So we set up the operation. We set it up for one day. People get vaccinated. They're done. And then also for homebound vaccinations, which are obviously much harder. We have to send out people to go into someone's home, and it's very difficult to do that once and then come back exactly at the right time 3 or 4 weeks later, depending on the product. So ideally, the J&J vaccine is perfect for homebound without a sure allocation of J&J. At this point, we're going to be discussing where we go next with our homebound circumstances, and that's unfortunate because we really wanted to try to reach as many as we can, as fast as we can, but we will have to wait until we see what kind of allocation of Johnson & Johnson we have before we can resume that. The overall vaccine statistics for the county, 275,000 people have completed their vaccine series. I'm one of them. And 275,000 people represents roughly 27.5% of the population of Westchester County have completed their vaccinations. There is another there's a total of 414,317 people that have at least one shot of the vaccine dose. That includes those who've completed their doses and those who have had a one-shot vaccine from Johnson & Johnson. But even if you got one shot of Pfizer, one shot of Moderna, you're in this number, 414,317, and that is 42.8% of the Westchester population. We are closing in on 50% of the population of Westchester County being vaccinated. Now, if you have had one dose, there's a 3-week or a 4-week period, depending on the type of pharmaceutical that you use, in which case all of those people have had the second dose, and then we will be at 42% of everybody, and that doesn't count the people who are going to get vaccine between now and the end of that 3 to 4 week waiting period for other individuals. So I think we're pretty confident we're going to be over 50% of this county vaccinated, and now that we're not worrying about what you do for a living, we're not worried about whether you have comorbidities or what your age is, it's open opportunity. We think that's the best possible place to be to reach the greatest number of people. Our county is a big county. We have communities as large as Yonkers, 200,000 people, as small as the village of Buchanan with 2,000 people, or towns the size of Pound Ridge and North Salem, which are fairly small. And then, of course, we have our mid-level communities, towns, and in some cases cities, where populations are not tiny, they're not huge, but the basic services and the concerns of the people who live in those communities have to be met by their town government and, in some cases, the larger village governments. One of those towns is the town of Mamaroneck. Population is a little below 30,000, although we always hope when the census comes in, it knocks us up a little bit. It is one of the communities that I first represented in public office almost 30 years ago. Literally this year it'll be 30 years. And Mamaroneck is a community where you think of by the word Mamaroneck what is in fact Mamaroneck Village, which is a part of the overall town of Mamaroneck. And we have that in a number of other parts of the county where there's a village and a town, Pelham Village, Pelham Town, and other places. There is also a village of Larchmont, which if you're on the train comes one stop before Mamaroneck. That village is a separate, distinct municipality from the village of Mamaroneck, but they're both part of the town of Mamaroneck. And so town supervisors, whether it's in Greenburgh or Mount Pleasant, and in this case Mamaroneck, they have to balance two worlds. A portion of their population that they provide the direct services to within the town, and then a portion of their population that gets their direct services from a village, but certain town services are provided by the town. If it sounds confusing, it's because it is. New York State municipal law does not make it easy on us, but we have to understand how the structure of government is if we're going to try to deal with it as best as possible. And I would argue, and I'm sure I'll be contradicted by friends elsewhere in the county, that no combination of communities works more cooperatively than the village of Mamaroneck, the village of Larchmont, and the town of Mamaroneck. On the top of that structure is town supervisor Nancy Seligson. I've known Nancy for a long time. We go back to the beginning of her service on the town board as a town council member, and then she became supervisor a number of years ago, a decade plus ago, and she has given exemplary service. She is sort of the epitome of the volunteer public official, a person who doesn't get into public office because they can't find a job or because they want to give contracts to their friends or whatever the nefarious reasons sometimes are. She's in public service. She comes out of a background with great environmental concerns. She's been an environmental activist before that, very prominent in programs to clean the Long Island Sound. And of course, by profession, she's a lawyer, and that always helps in this business. I am not a lawyer, but for those who are, or those who want to be, it's an essential part of it. Nonetheless, Nancy is a terrific friend, and she's been a terrific public official, and so now Supervisor Nancy Seligson. And if I've given you more credit academically, don't worry about it, just take it.
Thank you very much, George, and thanks for inviting me here today, and thanks for accusing me of being a lawyer, which I'm not. I just act like one sometimes, I guess. But George thankfully explained the structure of the town of Mamaroneck and our sister villages so well, and it's very confusing for folks, and it's very confusing for the residents of the communities as well, especially since most of the folks who live in the unincorporated area of the town of Mamaroneck have a postal address that says Larchmont. But we are all in it together, and we do get along very, very well. We share many services among the villages and the town. The town provides overall services for tax collection and senior citizen services, Section 8 services, some recreation services. We administer the ambulance district, and so we all work together quite well. In fact, we have a system called, meeting system called our TVS meetings, and it's Town Village School, where we quarterly get together with the chief elected officials of the villages, the town, our administrative chief officials, and the superintendents of the 2 school districts in our communities, and the school board presidents. And that's a time, and we have a meeting tomorrow, in fact, to talk about all of the issues that we deal with together. And COVID has been the perfect example of how do we all deal with something together, because it's affected all of us. And we compared notes all along the way, and I'm happy to say, I'm going to knock on a little wood, that we are doing pretty well in our community. As of today, in the unincorporated area of the town of Mamaroneck, we have 51 folks who have active COVID, according to the county's website. And we have resumed all staff back into the town center in the town of Mamaroneck, but the town center is only open to residents by appointment. We have created the position of reception greeter and have our fabulous fire chief in that position during the day at the town center, who's able to help folks, direct them, and assist them in whatever they're looking for from the town. We have asked everyone in the town to wear masks, of course, while they're working and moving around, and we also have implemented and installed plastic shields in areas where there's any kind of very close contact or the public would be interacting. And we've been very lucky in the staff situation in the town that we haven't had very many members who've gotten sick with COVID and haven't had that many folks who've actually been exposed. Certainly some, but not many. It really was a challenge to figure out how we were going to run our sanitation department, because those folks work closely together in a truck and come together in the beginning of the shift and at the end of the shift. Same thing with the highway department. So we were able to stagger start times for different shifts and help those workers separate and not spend a lot of time in close contact. That has been pretty successful. We also changed our garbage pickup to curbside. We had previously provided pickup. I used to say it's called backdoor pickup, but I would say, you could put your garbage anywhere and our guys would have gone to pick it up. And it was a very, very personalized service. But now we have asked everyone to put their garbage curbside, because that's the easiest way for the sanitation workers to pick it up and not have to engage in any other kinds of spaces or with other people. And we've really tried to impress upon everyone that we all have to take these precautions, and we all have to do it together in order to protect one another. Our community has also risen to the occasion by creating igloos and little greenhouses for the restaurants in our villages and the 4 restaurants in the town of Mamaroneck. And those have been pretty successful too. I think everyone is very looking forward to the warmer weather where we can all be outside in much more comfortable settings. The rules have changed in the state of New York. You're now allowed to have an outdoor event with up to 200 people. And those people, though, do have to wear a mask and be able to socially distance. So we are looking at some of our summer programs and hoping that we can bring back our summer concerts. We will, of course, be holding summer camps, and the kids will be grouped in pods that will not overlap, and they're going to have a different kind of structure. And we've been also looking at and discussing how we're going to, or if we can, hold parades, because we have some terrific parades in our community. And in checking with my colleagues throughout the county, it looks like no one is going to be able to have a Memorial Day parade, unfortunately. But we have begun talking among the 3 municipalities in our area to do a tri-municipal tribute event that we will ask our cable access LMC media to cover for us. Because we certainly don't want to have an event and encourage everyone to come and have more than 200 people, because we have to abide by all the rules. So we're surviving. We're doing pretty well in our community. We really are appreciative of what the county's done, because the county has really provided leadership and guidance for us throughout the entire coronavirus pandemic. And we've had weekly calls, continue to have weekly calls with the county to discuss all of the new executive orders, all the rules, and talk about how to really get through this and what is the best way to do to deliver our services. George Latimer has been a great leader for all of our communities throughout the county during this pandemic, and that's what we really needed, because having everyone try and figure it out on their own, in their own isolated ways, would have been much more difficult, and certainly not nearly as productive. So we really appreciate the leadership and guidance from the county in order to move forward. And of course, we have lots of other things going on in the town of Mamaroneck. I don't know, how long do I have?
A few more moments, sure.
There's some good, one very special project that's going on right now, and that is we have in the midst of building a community solar project. We have the Hommocks Ice Rink in the town of Mamaroneck that we own, and we have leased out the roof to a solar developer, and they will pay us rent. They will build solar panels on the roof. They will get the tax credits for those solar panels, and we will be able to market that solar energy in the town of Mamaroneck. And we are looking to market that to our low and moderate income residents, as well as our apartment dwelling residents first, because a community solar project is simply investing in a solar site that's not on your property. But you get the benefit of renewable energy, and you get a 10% discount in your electric bill. So that's an exciting project that we have going on right now, and we're excited about rolling that out. We also are embarking on a comprehensive plan update, which is a big deal. With all of the changes that we've endured this year, it's going to be really interesting to reach out to our community and ask them what's their vision for the future of the community and what do they value in the community. So we have a lot of exciting things going on, and we're all looking forward to some relaxation of the COVID structure, and hoping that everyone gets their vaccine. I have, and it was very simple, and I'm very relieved to have it and very grateful. But again, thank you to the county for all their leadership on the coronavirus. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate it very much. That's Town Supervisor Nancy Seligson from the town of Mamaroneck. Nancy will be completing her tenure as Town Supervisor at the end of this year. I know we'll be able to, by then, celebrate without too much social distancing, some social distancing, but to really thank you for a terrific job that you've done over these years, both as a member of the council and then as Town Supervisor. You've given the town terrific leadership. And so much of leadership, just as an editorial comment, is always perceived to be the leader tells everybody what to do. But Nancy has perfected the art of collegial leadership, where you bring people together, you work through your agreements and your disagreements, and you accomplish the tasks at hand, and you do it with that cooperative support. You've done it, just as you pointed out, with the other municipalities, and that's a great legacy for you to be proud of during your time in Mamaroneck Town. And I was there for every minute of it, so I can say and appreciate it. So anyway, and we will continue to have local mayors and supervisors join us at these updates. You get a little flavor of what's happening in each of the different communities. Next, there's been some indication from the state about college students and vaccinations, and I want Ken Jenkins to cover what the governor has laid out as a game plan. Ken.
Thanks, George. Governor Cuomo today announced that New York State will provide a new separate allocation of 35,000 vaccines to address the college student population at SUNY schools as well as private schools. The initial allocation will include 21,000 vaccinations that will be administered to SUNY students, with another 14,000 vaccines to be administered to the private colleges. The vaccines are going to be administered to the residential and non-commuter students who will be leaving for the summer. The colleges are starting to wind down at least their in-person classes, and that will start near the end of April and going into May. And certainly this is going to be extremely helpful for those folks that will need to be going back home and going back to their families. They are planning on administering the 35,000 vaccines utilizing the Johnson & Johnson. So if someone is a student that is under 18 at this moment in time, they will have to be able to be shuttled to utilize the Pfizer vaccine, as the county executive mentioned earlier. The governor also announced that the new direct vaccine allocation will be in part administered to the SUNY students, and through their particular process, certainly our good friend, the Chancellor of the SUNY school system, Jim Malatris, who's been with the county executive and certainly been here in SUNY Purchase to be doing their flagship pool testing program. We're looking forward to having that continued with all of the locations in Westchester County. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Ken. We also want to point out that the state has issued regulations that further inform school districts on how to handle social distancing and the structure of the classroom setting. These regulations came down about 5 o'clock on Friday, so we've had a chance to digest them at 100 miles an hour. We had a telephone call, as we do every Monday morning, with school superintendents, and over the next 48 hours, we're going to try to specify in some detail how the state's guidelines are adjusted. We just received it, so therefore we'll have an idea in the next period of time. There's a call tomorrow where the state health department will inform the county health department officials all across the state as to how these new regulations affect what will happen in the various schools. And since the schools are in the process of reopening, it's very important to both provide the educational function that we all know kids need and at the same time do it in a safe fashion. So that is a second issuance from the state that we will try to help interpret along the lines of what Nancy said with the municipal officials. We try to provide the same assistance to our school districts, and we'll see exactly how that plays out. So I have one non-COVID related topic that I want to touch on, which may not matter to everybody in the county, but it popped up on Facebook yesterday. It's caused quite a bit of consternation, so we are going to make sure that information is out in the various mechanisms that we have, both through this, through what we do on Facebook, and how we communicate with those that have expressed some interest. There was a flyer that was out late last week into the weekend. It was not, the author of the flyer was not identified, nor means to contact the author. So the minute you see an unnamed flyer, you do have to, sort of step back and try to understand the motivation. But it asserted that there were all sorts of things that were happening at the Saxon Woods Park. It's actually in the Harrison portion of the park. That park straddles the border of Mamaroneck Town, Scarsdale, White Plains, and Harrison. But in the Harrison entrance portion of the park, that was involved in the implementation of a disc golf program, which is a Frisbee-related program that mirrors the game of golf as competitors go around through 18 holes and try to put the Frisbee in a basket and so forth. But that there were all these terrible outcomes that were going to happen or were in the process of happening. And when we saw the flyer, we, of course, immediately indicated to those who were commenting on Facebook, take a deep breath. We're going to do our homework and find out what the story is. We know that 2 years ago in the 2020 budget, we adopted that budget in 2019, so 2 years ago this December, we allocated $40,000 to institute a disc golf recreation program at one of the county parks. It was not identified at that point where it was. We had a program like that in effect previously for a long time at Kensico Dam Plaza. When that park was renovated, the disc golf program was discontinued. But there's been a certain demand from people in Westchester County to have it as a recreation. And like any recreation, miniature golf is another example, there's a certain number of people that like to play a version of what the actual sport is. So we have 6 public golf courses, and we have 3 miniature golf courses, and so having a disc golf course would provide that type of situation. But the flyer sort of asserted that there was clear cutting going on at Saxon Woods. That is not true. It pointed out that there was an impact on the sensitive environmental access along the Mamaroneck River. That is not true. That the plans were already locked into place. That is not true. Let me tell you what is true. The County Parks Department has been working with a designer, one of 2 competing entities. They selected a designer to design a disc golf course in Saxon Woods Park. The intent is to have this structured away from the existing hiking trails. And if you're familiar with the area, as you go north out of the village of Mamaroneck on Mamaroneck Avenue, Saxon Woods sits to your left. The first entrance into Saxon Woods generally are hiking and trails that go through the southeastern part of the park. On the other side of the Hutchinson River Parkway is an entrance off of Mamaroneck Avenue that enters the pool and a miniature golf course and also a soccer field. That's at that portion of the park. If you're on the other side of the park, there's access to a golf course, and that's access to the Scarsdale side. So you enter through the Harrison side. There are hiking trails there, a place for people to walk, run if you choose to, and so forth. Mountain bikes are not allowed in that park, although every so often somebody uses them anyway. And so it is embedded in the back of that park in a wooded area because the sport itself requires there to be obstacles to performing the function of putting the Frisbee in the basket and getting your points. So there is no clear cutting underway at that park, nor is there any plan for this. So whoever reported that reported hearsay, or they saw something and didn't quite understand what they were seeing. But we're happy to open up the park for anybody that wants to tour. It's open anyway to tour to see that there is no clear cutting going on at the park. The proposal has not yet been approved by the Parks Department nor by senior management of the county. And in this experience, the designer comes back with a design, works out how they think that the course could be created. It's really not that difficult to create because it's only the addition of small little tee boxes and little baskets that will reside, that will house the Frisbees when they're thrown. And to not touch the nature of the park itself, no trees coming down. Now, there will be removal of dead trees, as there always is. There'll be removal of dead branches, as there always is. But for the program to work, the sort of the floor of the forest has to remain intact. So if down is ivy and things of that nature, that would stay there. There'd be no removal of that. There would be removal of invasive species, which we do all the time whenever we come across them. And as we go through this, you may see that some of the brush are non-native growth, which will strangle native growth, and those would be removed. But no trees are going to be removed in all of this process. The money that's set aside for this was budgeted publicly in the 2020 budget. It was a suggestion by the Westchester Board of Legislators, which we added to the budget to include it. And so the money was there. It's a matter of public record. There's nothing hidden about it. When I was asked what did I know, I didn't know that there were plans that were underway. And then, of course, I found out today there are no plans that are being implemented right now. They're still subject to review and to approval. There was some concern that part of the plans would be proximate to an environmentally sensitive piece of the Mamaroneck River. Since we haven't approved the plan, we certainly haven't authorized that. So I think there's a fear that represents sort of a projection ahead of what might happen. The golf holes are not close to the existing main trails, so if you go into the park in order to enjoy the hiking trails, you will be able to do that and not run into this recreation being pursued. There are no special arrangements being made for people who play this recreation any more than any other recreation in the park. The park itself is open from sunrise to sunset. Those are the hours of operation. There's no night games being played. And then the parking situation is what it is. There is no charge for parking on the weekdays. There is a charge on the weekends. That's not going to be waived depending on who comes. And it's done because there are Westchester residents that desire this type of recreation in the same way that Westchester residents desire to play soccer. Westchester residents desire to play softball. And we have different parks that accommodate those different types of uses. The park, this use, if it's approved over the next 30 days, would probably be ready for some summer play, maybe mid or late summer. We've had some questions about whether we want to limit in the opening year attendance to Westchester residents only. We know there'll be a demand for it outside of Westchester. We normally do not have restrictions, residential restrictions on our parks and facilities. We imposed it last year on our beaches when New York City did not open their beaches, and we were concerned that Westchester residents wouldn't have access to the beaches as long as New York City's were open. But we may, because it's a first-time event, and we haven't discussed it or finalized this yet, we may have a residential limit for the first year of its operation just to see what kind of demand we get. How do we manage the demand, and is it workable before opening it up on a general basis? There were some other things that were highlighted in this flyer, and of course the tone of any flyer is to make you afraid and to rattle the cages. What's important to know, aside from these facts, is that we're not going to compromise the environment of a county park for a recreation, but we are going to look for ways to expand our recreational footprint in an intelligent way. We had disc golf previously at another county park, and so we're basically reintroducing a sport that we had already into a different facility. And we're certainly not going to compromise the environment there, and then we will have a chance to review that with the Parks Board and with the Board of Legislators. But there's a bigger principle at stake here. This applies in many, many other issues. I know from having been in public office for a number of years that people have a fundamental distrust for government and for the people that are in government. They think we're all corrupt, we're all on the take. Every decision we make is made because of our self-interest. And there are enough examples of that in the real world that it happens, so you can't say, well, it never happens, because it does from time to time. But there is a very simple way in this county for a citizen to react. If you see or hear something that you think is objectionable, call us. Call our offices here in the county executive's office, 995-2900. You can call the Board of Legislators at 995-2800. Now, both Ken and I served as county legislators at various times in our career. We chaired the County Board of Legislators. Many people will turn to their legislator as their representative to get this information, and that is always a good thing to do. But you're also welcome to call the county government itself, the executive branch, the administrative branch, because we have an open policy of talking to residents, talking to the press, talking to legislators, and talking to municipal officials. That has not always been the case, but that is the case now under this administration. And I would caution you, before you assume something that's a worst-case scenario, at least let us know so we can respond. If, in fact, our policy is something that you find objectionable, you'll have a great opportunity to protest it, to criticize it on Facebook and Twitter and so forth. But when a person takes a rumor and puts it out on Facebook or Twitter, and hundreds of thousands of people might see it, in this case thousands of people might see it, it takes days to set the record straight. And that isn't an appropriate way to deal with government. If you know that there's a matter of disagreement and you're lobbying to change a policy that's in effect, that's fine. But if you don't know something and you fear something and somebody has told you something, you should verify the facts first. And for whoever's the author of this sheet, if they're legitimately concerned over rumors that they heard, let's clear up those rumors so that you understand there is no clear cutting. There is no effort made to despoil our environment in order to have a recreation. And there is no subterranean motivation on it. It's the same motivation by which we are right now looking to find a place in the county where we can create a cricket field, because there is a demand for some of our residents to play cricket. We have to find what's the right location for that. Does it have to displace something else? Can we do it? Can we do it in an environmentally sound way? And we haven't decided what to do, but that's the same basic process we have. So I say this to you so that you understand from the horse's mouth what the circumstances are. And I invite you to communicate with us directly. You can communicate through your legislators as well. It is the executive branch that has the authority to implement these things, and then we do brief legislature and other boards and commissions. But ultimately, this is my responsibility to move forward on it. We're going to move forward on a legitimate recreation in a reasonable and sensible way, and in a way that will enhance that experience for the people that want to use it, but not affect the people that want to use the park for a different purpose. That is my commitment to you. It has always been my commitment in public office. I hope this at least addresses some of the issue. I don't think that everybody in the world is watching this today, so we will put this out in a couple of other forums to try to clear up the message. And if you do have any questions, you can certainly call my office at 995-2900. With that, I'm going to turn to Catherine Chaffee, see if we have some questions that are awaiting us.
So the first question comes from David Proper from the Journal News. Do you believe local colleges should require vaccinations for students to be on campus in the fall?
Well, it's not within our government to require it. That is the prerogative of the state government, and I'll let them decide what's mandatory. I do think it's a good practice. When we deal with people who are coming to college campuses here in Westchester County, they're not necessarily coming from just elsewhere in New York State, where the New York State rigor is in place. And there are a lot of states that are very rigorous, but they may be coming from states where it's not as rigorous, where mask wearing is not routine as it is here. So I think it makes logical sense for us to say there should be vaccination of every student now that it's allowable, and now that we appear that we're on the cusp of having sufficient vaccine product to do that. That would be a smart and logical thing to do, but it is the prerogative of the state to make that mandatory or not.
And the next question, which is the last question, comes from Martin Wilbur. He asks, are there any updates regarding the reports of pharmacies charging for vaccines?
We don't have a report. Martin Wilbur from the Examiner. The first question was David Proper from the Journal News Lowhead. This question comes from Martin Wilbur from the Examiner newspapers. As of this morning, we have no further update as to what the situation is we're still waiting to hear back from our investigative efforts. As soon as we have that, we'll report it. We tend to think since so much publicity was given to it and we've had no additional reports of it happening, that perhaps we solve the most important problem, which is by giving it publicity and attention, that those that may have been charging or doing the wrong thing understand now that they have to do the right thing. But we will make sure that we have closure on this and some sort of a report back that will summarize what the results of our investigation is. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, David, for the questions. If there's any other members of the press have any questions, you're welcome to call us. Contact Catherine Chaffee at 995-2932, and we'll be happy to talk about that offline. We're scheduled to be back here again on Thursday at 2 o'clock to give you an update. We are very encouraged by the dropping hospitalization numbers. We hope that continues. We hope that the fatality numbers continue to be low, and if we're a little bit lucky, we'll see a continued diminution in the number of infections and a rise in the number of vaccinations, all of which leads us to a day when we don't have to have twice-a-week updates on COVID. That would be a good day when we reach the point at which the pandemic is behind us. But until that day comes, we'll try to be communicative as we can. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Thank you for watching. Have a good day and stay safe.